I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast where the company we work for is selling tickets to our execution, I guess? Because this week we watched Schizoid.
Written by Bill Gallagher.
Directed by Nick Horan.
And aired on a date that I'm now realizing I failed to look up. November 17th, 2009. There we go.
You had so much time to look up. I did the whole ASMR bit. I did the whole serial bit. And you didn't even look it up.
I forgot, but it's okay. I saved myself at the last moment. Unlike most of the characters in this episode.
You told me you were ready, and you deceived me.
Just call me Unto. This is the most wild, yet fascinating, and just flat out a fun ride episode of The Prisoner yet.
This is the most... Yeah, this is the most... God, I can't even find the word. This is the most bafflingly engaging 50 minutes of television I've ever watched.
Yeah, halfway through this episode, I just threw my hands up in the air and went, you know what? I'm just here for this ride, and I'm really, really loving all of it.
Yeah, I have a note that says it's about halfway through my notes, and it just goes, this episode is going to be f***ing wild, I can tell.
That scene, I just have to mention this now. I don't think I can wait. That scene where 2 goes and smokes with the store owner is damn near euphoric. It's such a good scene. It's such a good scene.
I prefer... My favorite part was we had been assuming, even though there were indications that it may not be true, we were assuming that Michael and New York, that was all pre-Village flashbacks. And then in this episode, Six goes to the store. He takes a receipt. He's like, what's on you? The guy's like, anyone can fake a receipt. Smash cut later in the episode, flashback, New York, Michael going to the key access guy, who turns out to be the same guy as the shopkeeper. He says, hey, need this receipt. Writes down, anyone can fake a receipt before the guy can say it. And then it's like, what's happening? What order is everything happening in? Are we actually seeing things in chronological order and not as flashbacks?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to any of those questions. We
like
just
that
don't
moment,
know.
that moment taking place chronologically, it seems, after the one we saw in the village, and yet in the ostensibly flashback-oriented New York segments, is just like completely shifts the paradigm of the entire show to this point.
Right. But at the same time, when number 6 talks to him in the store, he literally says, "Don't I know you from somewhere?"
And we had seen indications of this before. I mean, especially last week with Anvil was the most obvious one, with the explosion mirroring 415 throwing herself down the hole.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I take that back. I think that was in a deleted scene or a deleted part of that scene where he goes, "Don't I know you?" and they cut it out.
Yeah, possibly. I don't remember exactly.
The fact that we're even watching the deleted scenes too is just another wrench thrown in to just this. There are no, what words could possibly describe this? Just the confusion of all of this, you know?
Mm-hmm. Just wild. I say we try and outline the plot of this episode, which is going to be difficult because there's so much of did this happen? Did this happen the way it was shown to us? This episode, I must say, I'm very impressed that this episode went so far as to even insinuate through visuals that it may not be showing you things the way that they're happening to the characters.
Right. It begins pretty simply, though. It begins showing the aftermath of the explosion in Six's apartment that we saw last week.
Right.
Six is obviously distraught about this, so I believe he just goes to Sumacor and is like, "You killed her. You guys killed her."
Right. And then we get a video of Lucy telling him that nobody resigns from Summer Corps. They're selling tickets for your execution, Michael, and they're calling it a promotion. That's the exact quote she says.
Yeah, that wasn't. I mean, that's not a literal thing, right? She's not speaking literally. She's just saying that the promotion they.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, the promotion, okay, if what she's saying is that the promotion that they're offering him is actually some sort of like ruse or trap, then yeah, it's metaphorical or whatever. But also, we've never heard of that promotion until now, as far as I can remember.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either, but what I do know is that now 2 shows up at the club that 1112 has been frequenting.
Yeah, and he's wearing a bitchin' suit. It's like red with white polka dots. Super jealous, gonna be honest. My immediate next note after that is the penny farthing bike hanging from the ceiling is a little bit on the nose, isn't it?
Oh yeah. And there's even a "be seeing you" reference in this episode. 1112 and 2 have a little spat. 1112 storms off. I think he wants to tell him what's really going on, but 2 doesn't want to. But what 2 does say is that, like, he points to his head. He's talking about his mind, and he says, in your mind is all the past and all the present. Just really hammering home the fact that we as the audience have no idea about the chronology of anything. It's just this muddled, confused, cyclical thing that we are given and made to deal with.
Right. So
in a weird way, actually, I didn't think of this until now, but in a weird way, 1112 is almost as much, maybe even more of an audience stand-in than 6,
For this episode, I almost feel like 313 is the one they've made the audience surrogate, and she's the one who's like, what is going on?
Yeah, that's true.
But I agree that in previous episodes, 1112 does kind of serve that audience surrogate role, and maybe that's speaking to the fact that this interpretation of the prisoner has more recurring characters than the original did, so they can kind of switch the audience viewpoint between characters almost.
Yeah. No, I self-inserted as 2 in the original show. No,
interesting. No. Which
no.
2? Which 2? I'm the 2 who loses his mind. I'm the 2 in Hammer into Anvil who gets super paranoid and then gets fired.
I personally identified the most with number 1, just because I'm myself am number 1. No, I'm not.
They have a wild reference to number 1 at the end of this one with 2x6, where he says, if we are 1, we can defeat 2.
Yeah. Just that line, combined with some of the other stuff we're about to get into, really made me question my assertion in episode 2 about how this seems like it's all going to be leading up to a big reveal and an explanation as to what's going on. I'm not so sure about that anymore. There's 1 episode left. There's 50 minutes of content left.
In 50 minutes, they have like a dozen plot threads to wrap up.
I know, and they're probably going to introduce at least a couple more. Wouldn't put it past them.
Jeez. So 2 pulls 1112 out. Anyway, so he even has a line. He even has a line, and this line, I'm just reading it in my notes, realizing that it relates to Keon's theory that he put forward before we started recording. This line, he says, like, where is the village? It's inside the mind.
Right.
Which Keon's assertion before the show, his theory was that all of this is taking place inside the mind of 2's wife.
Yeah, or like
dream.
I think it's her dream. Like, right, she's dreaming the village, yet she herself is inside her dream, or something like that, which is why they have the pills, which we now learn in this episode are to keep her asleep.
Right.
And, that kind of coincides too with like later on in the episode, the episode kind of gives us an unclear view of like, is Six in 2x6's mind, or is it the other way around? And like that kind of puts it into perspective too, where it's like, if she really in her own dream, then maybe Six is in 2x6's mind and 2x6 is in Six's mind and vice versa and stuff. So it makes little sense and it's hard to wrap your mind around, but maybe that's what's going on. I don't know. And they even talk about the whole dream of the butterfly thing in one of the earlier episodes. So yeah, that's just my theory.
I buy it. I mean, I think it's an interesting theory. I wonder if there would be any support for that theory in previous episodes. Like, I wonder why, if this whole thing involves her dream, like, why is it necessary to keep her asleep? Like, trying to remember if the holes only started appearing after she woke up or before now.
They started appearing in episode 3, and I think she woke up also in episode 3.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so maybe they're like the holes in her, unconscious dreaming mind thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you try to lucid dream and you, if you focus too much on one thing, sometimes that thing just goes whoop, away. Like, when you try to focus on something so much that that act of focusing on it causes it to slip out of your mind or out of your focus.
She does say in this episode that she dreamt of being a pig, which we clearly saw people just turning into pigs in earlier episodes.
And also pig's breath, which that doesn't seem to be a thing anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, what does seem to be a thing anymore, or actually just now, is that Six kind of... Well, actually, this is a recurring thing. He breaks into 313's house again. But unlike before, he just climbs into her bed.
He's like, you kissed me. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, why'd you do that? And she's like, I don't know. So he's like, all right, I'm going to kiss you now. And she's like, no, get out.
Right. Six later, she later sees Six, and he's just like, she kind of gives him the cold shoulder, and he's like, well, why? Like, what's going on? And she reminds him that, in her view, he did this, but he's like, wait, what? Like, I didn't do that. It didn't happen. Yeah,
so immediately, if you remember your classic Prisoner trivia, the Schizoid man was the one where Curtis became 6'2", or it became the actual Six because they were trying to convince Six that he wasn't Six. So you're like, there's two Sixes. Six tries to get into 147's taxi, and 147 just goes, oh, hell no, get out of here. I don't want another fight with you. Six is like, what the hell?
So this is when Six starts to realize that, like, something isn't as it seems. And lo and behold, right at this moment, he sees someone who looks exactly like him.
Yeah, so he sees him across the way, and it's a little unclear whether 147 sees him or not. But Six engages pursuit.
He chases him to, like, some sort of abandoned building, and they kind of have, like, a little fight. Not a little, I mean, they're they're like taking knives to each other.
It's a big fight, It's a big fight. That's so clearly between Jim Caviezel and his stunt double.
I think the result of this is that I don't even remember which one it is. It's one of them gets cut on the cheek. I think it's the real number 6.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I don't know. They look the same.
Yeah. And later on in the episode, like, really tries and succeeds to visually confuse you as to which one is which.
Right. Unlike 2 and Unto, who are very clearly different.
But also the same? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
That's what I like about this episode, though, and about this show, is that, like, it's taking those concepts from the original and just kind of I don't know, taking them to not their logical conclusion, but to the extreme or something. Like it takes the whole schizoid man thing and just does it in a way that like actually confuses you, you know?
Yeah, because also this episode leaves the question of who created 2 times 6 or 2 by 6 as an open question. You know, in Schizoid Man, it was very obvious that it was very obvious because it was stated to us that the village created the 6 duplicate to try and break 6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in a way, like this episode is doing the same thing where number 2 in the original, if you remember, tried to actually convince the real 6 that he was the inspector.
Yeah.
Which this one's almost kind of doing the same thing, but like I don't know, it's less clear and it's more meta or something like that, where it's like you as the audience really have no clue and you kind of start to wonder like, all right, which one is real and which one's not. Almost, you know, you can imagine 6 at that point is maybe number 6 in the original Prisoner is maybe questioning it, but maybe not because he's Patrick McGowan and I don't know. I don't know, man.
He's old Patrick McGowan.
All I know is that Jim Caviezel delivers a couple I am 6s in this episode, really rivaling I am Batman.
Maybe he should be the next Batman.
Yeah, Jim Caviezel.
Jim Caviezel for Batman when? 6 finds out from 2 by 6 that 2 by 6 wants to kill 2. So 6 goes to warn 2 about it. We then get an announcement from 2 going, if you see a 2 impersonator, don't be afraid to report him immediately. We're looking for a 2 impersonator.
And then immediately after that, he goes out. He talks about how the 2 impersonator is like going to be disheveled and just being a weirdo out in public and stuff. And as soon as he does that, he goes out. He like takes off half of his clothes, messes up his hair, and just starts acting like a weirdo out in public.
And yeah, you know, at first I thought that this was actually a different character, but then later on I guess it's actually 2, but then I don't know.
I had the exact opposite thought. At first I was like, okay, it's 2. It's obviously the same person. But then I was like, wait, is it? God. This show.
Great.
Well, at this point in the episode, 2's wife wakes up.
Right. So 1112 has wanted to speak with his mom. Obviously. And so now that she's woken up, 2 is more than happy to let this happen. Not the least reason of which is he's happy to let this happen because he's out in the village gallivanting around as another guy, so it's not like he can stop it. That's what I was trying to say. Jesus.
And it's like, it's also like, to what end? Like, why did he do this? You know, we don't know why he did it. And maybe it doesn't even matter. Like, yeah, exactly. Maybe like the actual, you know, whatever plot reason as to why he did it doesn't even matter. I don't know.
See, I still don't even know if this is a different character than 2 or if it's the same person because the episode never tells you.
I think it's the same person. I'm pretty sure it is.
I don't know because I think there's some thematic brilliance in 2 by 6 trying to kill 2, but instead getting 2's double, so the double of 6 killing the double, trying to kill the double of 2.
Yeah, but maybe even then the double of 2 might be just 2 as well. Well, okay, so if you look at the 2 doubles in comparison, so 2's double is unto, so obviously the exact opposite of everything that 2 is. 6's double is 2 by 6, so an exact replica of everything that 6 is.
But
but
doubled.
doubled, right? But even then, like 2 or 6 is obviously repressing his desire to get revenge on 2 and putting that into 2 by 6. So in that sense, maybe they're not exact doubles, where one is more vengeful and the other is less, or is at least not accepting of it.
I have genuinely no idea.
Yeah. Well, if you like, if you if you think that like, if you think of it the way that I saw it, which is that 2 and 2 by 6 are not the same person yet. Or sorry, I'm getting confused here. Whereas that 2 and unto are the same person, and 2 by 6 and 6 are not the same person. Then it's like, 6 is really externalizing this feeling within himself of that he wants to get revenge and he's not accepting it. And we see that very clearly when he goes to Two's manor and is like, I just want to, like, I don't want to, get revenge. Like, nah, that's not me. That's this other guy who looks exactly like me. Whereas, Unto, he has that scene later on where he's like, they're saying like, you look exactly like Two. And he's like, yeah, I am Two. So he's really accepting this other side of himself in a way. And he's using, a certain set amount of time, it seems, to kind of engage in this other side of himself that he's been hiding or something like that.
Well, it seemed to me like the first interaction between 6 and 2 is very much along the lines of the original Schizoid Man, because 6 says like, well, somebody hates you and they want to kill you, and 2 goes, well, you hate me, don't you? And he goes, yes. And he's like, well, do you want to kill me? He's like, no. And he's like, are you sure? Like playing into this, like, well, what if you are the double and the other one's the real one, and you're the one who came up with the plan to kill me?
Yeah.
But like I'm delivering it so poorly because the exchange is actually really well written, and I'm doing it so poorly. But
yeah, there's almost, it's really difficult to kind of capture this episode in discussion format, especially because we both watched it a couple days ago, which we've both been trying not to do with this show, just because of this exact situation where it's hard to actually piece together or remember what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I think what happens next is that 2 goes to the store. And the store, he apparently had a sort of spat with the store owner as well. He learns that he, or 2 by 6, asked for a knife, which they don't have.
Is this 6? See, this is where again I was like, well, is 6 and 2 by 6 different people? Because in the version that's aired, not in the deleted scene, so looking only at the version that's aired, 6 shows up with a receipt that clearly he's found in his house, I guess. And he's like, what is this? Like, what is this for? He's like, well, obviously it's for a knife. I don't sell knives, though. You wouldn't get them from me. I don't sell knives. I'm a good prisoner. I'm a good villager. I'm a good prisoner. That was a Freudian slip. So this is where I was like, okay, well, it's clear that they're different people, right? Because he doesn't know what the receipt is, but who even knows?
Right. Unto actually also goes into the store, and he's looking for cigarettes, which the store owner vehemently denies that they have at first. But then he cedes, he takes some out, and they both start smoking. This was an amazing scene. Everything just slows down. The dialogue is slow. The scene is slow. It lasts a long time.
2 has this whole long monologue basically about how, people don't like to kill themselves, but they smoke. And smoking is just a long way of killing yourself because you get cancer and that kills you. And then the store owner says something that was really funny. He says, like, that's a bit philosophical for a Tuesday.
As all this is going on, 11-12 is like just seeing the village sights with his mom, who's now fully woken up.
Right. They have a discussion about the village and
yeah, I forget if this is now or later, but 11-12 really questions his mom as to why he can't leave the village, and she says that like people who are born in the village can never leave or something like that.
Yeah, I have the it's she refers to it as the other place, and she says that people who weren't born here, so people who were brought here, I think is the exact word she says, can go to the other place. but people who were born here cannot. That really angers 1112, so he ditches the conversation. He's like, I'm outie.
Meanwhile, 147 has come across Unto, and he says, like, you can't act like this out in public, or you can't be seen not having a number out in public.
Mm-hmm.
So he takes him home, and they kind of get to know each other, I guess. I mean, he eats their signature cherry cake, which he did in episode 1. Or 2 did in episode 1, rather.
Yeah, that red herring coming back around.
Meanwhile, we see what might be or may not be, now that we've fully watched the episode, a flashback of Six seeing the guy from the store as the access guy at Summercore.
Yeah, and this was my favorite scene in the episode because Six basically goes into Summercore and he tries to use his key to get to the top floor, which I guess is secure, and it doesn't let him, so he pretends he left his key at home and goes to visit the key maker. And this is when he's like, can you make me a key? Like, here's a receipt. And he goes, anyone can fake a receipt, except Six has already written that on the paper.
Right. Yeah, this is the scene, more so than any other scene in the episode, that really makes you wonder just what the chronology is here.
It's like I said earlier, it completely shifts the paradigm of what we had assumed were flashbacks into being potentially. We thought that we were seeing everything out of order, potentially, that we were seeing flashbacks. But this shifts everything to mean it might be happening, that the order we're seeing things might actually be the order that things happen in. And it's done really well because it's set up in the first third of the episode. The scene is set up where Six goes to the store with the receipt, and the storekeeper says, anyone can fake a receipt. And then it pays off, like another 20 minutes later, that pays off. It's just done really well.
Right, but I mean, it leads you to question how that's even possible.
Right, because then this, like, to me was like, so are there 3 Sixes in existence? 6, 2x6, and Michael? Because then we see when Michael, he gets the key from the guy because of this, that he wrote down what he was going to say before he said it. He gives him the key and they go up to the top floor and we see it's like a surveillance hub. We see a lot of scenes here, like through computer screens. We see images of Six going up to the top floor through security cameras rather than seeing it directly. But then he looks out of the window and he sees the village
right
in the distance from the 2 sort of crystal twin towers that have kind of been looming in the background with the past 4 episodes that we never really mentioned.
Right, and we don't even, like, this could even be like some sort of cyclical time thing, right? Where it's like the what we thought were flashbacks were actually like both before and after. You know, I don't know, man. Things are getting too weird.
Yeah, this incarnation of the Prisoner is definitely playing more with, like, I think the idea of consciousness and how we perceive things that the original Prisoner did not.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we talked about it extensively last week of just what the show uses its, visual storytelling techniques to, like, make you believe, but then is like, haha, no, that wasn't the case. Like how we thought the mines were down the holes, but they actually weren't. And actually, speaking of the holes, it might be right that the holes are being caused by Two's wife waking up, because you actually see one opening up on Two's, like, lawn, or like in his residence somewhere in this episode. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, and again, we explain this out of...
Meanwhile.
Six shows up again at 313's place. And again, climbs into her bed. And she's like, not again. And he's like, don't worry, it's really me this time. She's like, oh, that's okay then. And then she looks.
But then she sees the other six, or maybe she doesn't. The 6x2 just or 2x6 just looks out the window and sees six in his mind, and 313 doesn't. Like, I guess that's not clear either.
I thought it was pretty clear she saw him, but I wasn't 100% sure. I guess it isn't fully clear. If she does see him, then that even makes what happens next more unclear, you know? It's not it's not even a matter of clarity one way or the other. They both just lead to this like mire of not even knowing what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think at this point in the episode, 2x6 is planning on killing 2.
Yes. That's why he has the knife that Six went to the store and was like, "What is this, sir?"
So he confronts 2 in a church.
Right.
Oh, and there was a whole, I forget what this was, but there was like a whole sequence where he was trying to figure out 2's location. And I think 1112 told him or something like that.
1112 tells him, because he's like, we have to find out where 2 is before 2x6 does so we can save him. And 112 is like, oh, he's at the church. And then 6 goes, I'm 2x6 actually, right? Not actually 6. And 1112's like, yeah, I knew that. Actually, you're right.
Wow, it was a plan within a plan within a plan.
It's turtles all the way down.
So anyway, they go to the church, and 6 and 2x6. That's the thing too, is it's 2x6. My God.
Yeah.
So 6 and 2x6 have this mental or not conversation with one another, where they're trying to convince each other that they're right. And 6 delivers that line that you mentioned earlier, the one where he goes like, if we're 1, then we can defeat 2.
Not to mention that 2 also does the thing that 1112 does, because 6 is like, look, 2x6 wants to kill you, and 2's like, I know. Or unto is like, I know. I mean, he's like, guess what? I'm actually 2x6, not 6. Pranked you and your son. Get pranked, 2. 2's just like, I knew that. Are you going to kill me now?
Just further reinforcing that, like, and 2 even has that line earlier, the Great War is mental or something like that. Just further reinforcing that, like, 6 needs to get his personality back in order and really, accept that he has these vengeful thoughts, whereas, like, 2, he's really accepted that he also has this frivolity to him, but he's also the serious and no-nonsense 2 that we know and don't really love, I guess.
Right. So then it proceeds, like you said, 6 has a mental, or 2x6 has a mental, or perhaps not, I don't know, conversation with 6, where 6 is like, look, I'm part of you and you're part of me, and I have to accept the dark parts of me in order for us to beat 2. And 2x6 is like, you're right, we do have to do that.
Throughout this scene, it's like very confusing visually, because in some shots you see 6 and in other shots you see 2x6, usually not together. I don't think at all together.
Yeah, actually. So it's the way it looked to me was that the point of view shots from 2x6's point of view showed 6, but the wide shots, which are the omnipotent, let's say, point of view, don't show 6. You only see 2x6 holding a knife to 2, or unto. I don't know whichever of the 2 it is.
Yeah, okay. Well, the scene that we described earlier actually happens now. I guess we're kind of playing into the perhaps non-chronological sequence of the show, but the 6 version, or Michael, or whoever it is who's at the top levels of Summacor, looks out the window. Lo and behold, it's the 2 towers we saw in the background. He's looking at the village. He sees 6. And another thing is happening that we forgot to mention. 313 has gone out into the desert, and she winds up at the towers and heads on in.
Yeah, she's basically searching for meaning in a meaningless world.
That's what the episode basically leaves us on.
Right. Well, there's one more scene. And Well, there's actually a couple more scenes. Um, there's a scene with Michael in the penthouse with all of the screens in front of him, and he says, "I did this. I found these people, and I put them into my reports." And we see pictures of um, all the recurring characters we've met so far, except for 1112, like in their non-village forms. So Lucy, there's a picture of 147 in his New York timeline life. Um, so that to me made me think, well, is this all happening in Six's mind? Like,
Right.
because this whole "I did this," I found his exact line. I found these people and I put them into my reports. I did this. Like, are these all people? Because there's that thing that I guess it's a theory, but I guess it's also kind of been proven that you can never dream up a unique face. You always dream of a face that you've seen somewhere before, whether it's someone you know well or just a face in a crowd you've seen somewhere. Like your brain doesn't create faces from nothing. So that made me think, is this all happening in Six's mind? Like these are all people he saw surveilled and now they're appearing in this dream because they're the people he interacted with. He had a parasocial relationship with them basically because he was monitoring them for Summercore.
Well, time will tell, and by time I mean, yeah, again, the next 50 minutes of content. Unless it doesn't.
Unless it doesn't. Great. There's also one more scene that I wanted to mention because it's like you wonder why it's thrown in there because its inclusion just completely derails a lot of coherent thoughts you could put together about two and unto and the two impersonator because there's just the final scene of the episode. It's just some security guards dragging a guy who looks vaguely like Ian McKellen but isn't actually him down a corridor and them going, "Oh, we finally found the two impersonator. You thought you were real clever acting like two, huh?"
Oh, it was the shopkeeper. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So that's how the episode ends.
Yeah, he got screwed. He got the worst end of this deal.
So
And 2 returns home. We forgot about that too. 2. Yeah, I am looking forward to watching the next one. I would just watch it tomorrow if this show wasn't so confusing, but I'll wait until we're closer to recording the next episode.
so that you don't forget it. Yeah, fair enough. Probably going to do the same. I really, really want to know how they're going to explain all of this.
Or not.
Because it's this episode. I mean, like, if you were watching this show when it aired, you would go right into Checkmate immediately after this. They would air back to back. So, and that makes a lot of sense because this does really feel like the first half of like everything coming together at once.
Yeah, it's like it's the Once Upon a Time to Checkmate's Fallout.
Yes. Yeah, that took a hot second to process in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that took a second. But this episode so completely. We talked about this in the original Prisoner. This episode reframes so much of the previous 4 episodes with the revelations about like consciousness, 2x6 being in 6's mind, being in 2x6's mind, the holes, the like concurrency of the timelines, like completely reframes like the things you would get out of the episodes if we rewatched episodes 1 through 4. Like knowing these things now, I would be watching the episodes completely differently.
Yeah, I think so. And that's something we didn't touch on enough in the original Prisoner, I think, because it was, it was Dylan's first time watching the show, yet it was my third. So, I think the only way we really touched on it was me, kind of just going hee 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 with like minor little
like
details
Ian McKellen
and spoilers that I kind of noticed, or foreshadowing. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. And it's like if we went back and rewatched this, I think we'd pick up on a lot that we probably missed.
Right. I mean, that is something that the original show did that we should have touched on more in the final episode. But like Fallout does completely. Fallout and Once Upon a Time both change the way that you would view the rest of the show. Um, this one is interesting because it like you actually start to distrust the content you're being shown. Um, Generally, when you watch television, you always accept, or movies, you accept what is being shown to you as being fact, quote unquote. You know, it's true to the world. But now it's like, is the show itself lying to us? Was it lying to us by implying that everything, was flashbacks? And even though in the show they never actually said they were flashbacks, Michael specifically uses the word dream. He dreams of the outside world. The people who have those thoughts are called dreamers.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's like reading a Philip K. Dick story or something. It's like the more you read, the less you understand. And that is like watching this episode is like, up until now you could be like, yeah, it's weird and it's out there, but I get it. Like I think I get it. And this episode just comes along and is like, oh, never mind, I don't.
That's actually a really good description of it because yeah, like every Philip K. Dick book I've read is like the longer the book goes on, the less of a grasp I really have on the world that he's like Ubik was the worst for the best at this, but also that like Ubik, like the longer it goes on, the more you're just like, what is happening? Like, in fact, this it's an interesting comparison because this season now is actually reminding me a lot of Ubik because in Ubik there's two worlds and you're not sure which is the real world and which is the afterlife world that exists in that book. The general premise is, or the premise that's relevant to what I'm talking about is that they found a way to basically keep people's consciousness alive after death, not indefinitely, but for a period of time at which you could communicate with them after death for a couple months or whatever. And an accident happens, and basically you're following this character, and the longer the book goes on, the less you're certain that he survived and that he's not actually in the dream post-consciousness world. But there are indications that both are true. There are indications that neither is true. You're following two different worlds. By the end of the book, you're like, which world are we even in? What is happening? There's implications that there's a post-consciousness world within the post-consciousness world, like, and that's what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
So, just wild.
One thing I did want to touch on in this episode that I didn't even think about until now, which is it's just a difference between this one and the original. I don't know if you had anything else to talk about on this subject that we've been on for a while, but yeah, I mean, this one's, I guess, a lot less heady or something, which is that, like, this show actually does, its own version of romance. It's not a big focus, but it's there, whereas Patrick McGoohan was vehemently against any of that.
Yeah. I mean, there were hints of romance in the original, with especially Chimes of Big Ben.
Right. It was never as like, I mean, Patrick McGoohan, while I was watching this, I was like, all right, Patrick McGoohan probably would have objected to, like, playing number 6 and, like, climbing into 313's bed or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if there's something to be said in Patrick McGoohan being such an auteur of the original Prisoner franchise, and every love interest being a complete lie, like being a tool of the village to get the information out of 6. Like, wonder if Patrick McGoohan's got some relationship trauma in his history.
Well, we talked about it extensively actually on the original, is that, like, there's a lot of, I mean, there's a misogynistic, like, undercurrent in that show.
Oh, yeah.
For sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't seem to be, this version doesn't seem to be as, misogynistic, if at all. I don't think it really is at all, but maybe.
Not really.
No. Yeah, I mean, that's all I really had before I guess, other than like the deleted scenes and stuff like that. So
Yeah, well,
I was going to say deleted scenes and actors, but there's really no new characters in this episode. So
yeah. So the deleted scenes this week are pretty weird. um, we completely skipped over, and this is relevant to some of the deleted scenes. 2 gives 11-12 this like key during the conversation before his mom wakes up.
right. Yeah, we completely forgot about that.
And we don't know what this key is for. We don't know what it's used for. We don't see it used in this episode, but there's a deleted scene relating to this key, which indicates that maybe it's more important than this episode immediately presented it as.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so, well, the first deleted scene, 5-32, is when Unto is hanging out with 147. Another thing we skipped is that 147 finds Unto, and he's like, "You got to get off the street, man. If they find out you don't have a number, they're going to kill you."
I think we talked about that.
But it's 147 taking Unto to the little memorial they set up for his daughter who fell down the hole.
Mm-hmm.
So
the next one is 6 getting the knife from the shopkeeper. That's not shown in the final episode. It's just you're just kind of thrown in, and that's like when I was watching these deleted scenes, I was thinking like maybe they should have even not included the original thing with him getting into 313's bed, because like the other 2 you don't see his fight with 147.
mm-hmm.
You don't see the original buying of the knife from the shopkeeper because they cut it out, which kind of puts you in 6's shoes, where you like he doesn't know what's going on, you don't know what's going on, you know.
Yeah, I think that relates to, like I said, 313 being more of an audience surrogate in this episode than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But it could have been interesting to see it without that scene at the beginning. Could have been interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I am glad that they cut the scene of him getting the knife, because that removes a lot of... putting it in removes a lot of interesting things that are going on with the second scene, and kind of removes the tension in a way.
Yeah, does it? I mean, I don't know.
I think it might. Obviously, we don't know because they cut it, so...
Yeah. The next deleted scene, I believe, is... Oh, it was a weird one. It was 147 and 11-12 talking about the holes, and it kind of gets a little religious.
Mm-hmm.
I think 147 says that, like... I don't remember what he says, actually, but he says, like, he talks about God.
Yeah, I didn't write down exactly what he says, but yeah, he talks about God and faith, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
The next scene is the weird one with the key. Is 11-12 meets up with 2 and is like, "Dad, I know you gave me this key, but what the hell do I do with it?"
Bro, like, what's going on here? Like, please, just explain.
2 gives some basically evasive answers about how he'll know. He needs to, I guess.
Yeah, imagine being 11-12 and, like, you just, like, don't know what your life is, and everyone you try to ask just gives these, like, roundabout non-answers. And you're like, please, I just want some straight answers.
Please, I'm begging you. I just want to know what's going on.
You wake up your comatose mother thinking she might be the one who's actually there for you, and she just talks in riddles.
I understand why 11-12 stormed out of that meeting.
Yeah.
He's like lived for 16 years with all these questions and riddles and like what is the village and what's going on. And the one person he trusts to give him answers just gives him complete nonsense.
Yeah, sucks to be him.
Um, I mean, the final deleted scene is an extended version of when Six shows up to meet 313 the third time at her house. When the scene where he sees where 2x6 sees Six, um, is from a different angle. 313 is clearly having like a mental breakdown. Six is like, look, I'm here to help, and she's like, just hold me. I don't care if you're 2x6. I don't care if you're six. Just hold me.
Which is evidently not true given what happens later in the scene, you know?
I mean, 2x6 wants to kill two, and we love two. Well, the village loves two. Not. I'm not using we to refer to the podcast.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all of the deleted scenes.
Yeah, that's all the ones I got.
The DVD continues to confound me, just deciding when it wants to go to the menu and when it doesn't.
Yeah, this week it auto played episode 4 for me. I was like, what are you doing? Did it do that for you?
I think so. I think it did. It auto-played something. I don't know if it was episode 4, but I think it was.
It was episode 4 for me. So.
Well, there's only 1 week left of this show. I'm more, hungry for answers than I thought I would be. Mainly because I didn't have high expectations for this version of The Prisoner. Largely just because of what I'd heard. And maybe that's part of why we're enjoying it so much, is because we came in with low expectations. I don't know.
I think that's part of it. I mean, a lot of the reviews that I read when I do research for this podcast. Yeah, I do research for this podcast, unlike Trust Your Doctor.
Unlike Keon. What?
A lot of them, and this is why in the first episode I made a very conscious decision to try and separate whether the show was good or not from the comparison between this show and the old show. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm enjoying it so much, is because just as a television program, I'm enjoying the things that it's setting up. A lot of the reviews, going back to my original sentence, a lot of the reviews I read while doing research for the show compare it negatively to The Prisoner, and I think conflate that with meaning that the show is bad. And that's not all of them do that. Not everybody does that, but like planting that seed of doubt into the community can snowball, I think. So I think there is an element of us having lowered expectations and therefore enjoying it more.
Mm-hmm. We're definitely going to talk about next week whether we liked this one or the original one more, though. There's if we were trying to get around that, we'd just be lying to ourselves.
Yeah, there's no way to avoid that. There's no way to avoid that. We have to do that, and that next week is going to be the season finale of the season of Inevitable, if you can believe it.
Yeah, this one's felt a lot shorter, actually. I know we're kind of just getting into weird, unimportant meta stuff here, but the other shows we've watched were similar in length to this. Children of the Stones, Star Cops were pretty short. This one's felt a lot shorter, though. And it's 6 episodes, but it's in the same ballpark at least.
I think it comes with that dreamlike element.
Mm-hmm.
That the episodes themselves feel like they go quicker, so because of that, the podcast is feeling quicker. That, I don't know, that's just my guess.
That's probably right.
I think we should announce the show we're doing next now, because we're ahead on recording. We're recording this on March the 20th. It won't go out till the end of, I think, March 31st, actually. March 31st.
Yep.
I think we should announce what we're doing next on this episode. That way we can start to get some emails for that one already from people who are interested, especially since the next show we're doing is incredibly short.
Yeah. Well, not the show itself, but we're doing the first season of a show.
Yeah, we're going to do the first season of Lex, which is something that Sergeant Drano, fan of the show, friend of the podcast, has been requesting since we started Inevitable. Since even we were doing Zenith, he's been requesting all of Lex, but all of Lex is pretty long, so we're going to dip our toes in, do the first season. We'll see if we like it. And so that's the next season of Inevitable. That's going to start going out immediately after this season finishes. Basically a continuous run like we did between Star Cops and Children of Earth and
the Stones.
Children of Stones, sorry. And Sapphire Steel and The Prisoner. So
So that's coming up.
Rapidly.
Those are going to be
rapidly.
long episodes because Lex's first season has 2-hour-long episodes.
Yeah, so there's only going to be 4 episodes in that season of Inevitable, but they'll probably be longer to compensate. Not to compensate, just like as a result, I guess.
Right.
So, anyway, yeah, on that note, I'm out of things to talk about for this week of The Prisoners, so, and no emails on my side to read.
We did get one comment. This one's on Twitter, and it was from Keith, who asked whether he was like, do you think all the deleted scenes were a result of the producers saying it's the prisoner, it's supposed to be enigmatic? And I mean, that thought has definitely crossed my mind, and there might be it might be true. It might be a thing of like, it's supposed to be confusing and stuff, so just cut out everything that could explain anything.
There's also like in some of the, I mean, I agree, but some of them are also like the longer versions of scenes that are in the episode and may have been cut down for time. I'm thinking back to like Anvil, where the scene where 2 meets up with 6 at the golf club the second time is, I don't know, maybe a minute in the episode, but it's like 2 in the deleted scenes, and there's nothing really added or lost in the deletion. That like things like that, just indicating that it was cut for time.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I don't know. Bill Gallagher, from my understanding, seems to have been a big fan of the show, and I think he seems like a pretty clever guy, so I don't know if he would go so far as to just delete things because it was supposed to be enigmatic, but I wouldn't also say that I know for certain he wouldn't do that, so I'm just saying that I think he wouldn't do that.
Yeah, and part of my response too was just saying like we'll probably never know. Like there's so little written about this show, and like so few people in 2021 and probably onward even care about The Prisoner 2009 that we'll probably never have as much as we do on the original,
Yeah, and that goes back to the conversation we had last week, which is like it's just not as a beloved show, so people aren't going to write as much about it.
Yeah, or research as much about it. I mean, there's extensive research done on the production of the original show, and yeah, maybe this version's production just wasn't as interesting, but it's also just like, yeah, it has a lot less fans, a lot fewer fans.
Right. And that's a snowball effect, because you need the fans to... We only know so much about the Prisoner because the fans pestered Patrick McGoohan for years. Nobody's pestering Bill Gallagher. Like, what does it mean? Like, what were your thoughts?
The popularity of, thing is a snowball effect too, where it's like, I watched The Prisoner 1967 because I heard it was this really weird and good show, and I was like, okay, I'll watch that. I didn't hear that about The Prisoner 2009, right? I only discovered The Prisoner 2009 because I watched the original. Like, no one's really out there saying like, yes, watch The Prisoner 2009.
Right. Well, we are, maybe. Depending how good the resolution next week is, we might be. Let's say that. Well,
all right, here. So I know we're about to end, but I think this is interesting. So if next week is utterly disappointing for whatever reason, it could be any reason. But if it's utterly disappointing, do you think you would recommend this show? Like, just having the first 5 episodes be something that you like, we both pretty much liked, I think we can say.
Yes.
But if the last one is not...
I think I would.
Yeah, I
think I would with the qualification that I would tell them that like that the final the ending is weak, or the ending might be disappointing. Maybe I wouldn't even tell them that because that might be a spoiler. I don't know. It depends. It depends in what way it's weak, I guess. If it's just badly made but it answers all the questions, then it's like, then I think that requires less qualification than if like it's well made but doesn't answer anything.
Mm-hmm.
Which it doesn't have to answer anything, but even Fallout, by not answering everything, answered things, if that makes sense. It provided a full resolution to the show. Even though it may not have answered the questions, it resolved the show.
It wasn't unsatisfying. You don't come out of Fallout being like, well, that was like anticlimactic. It was almost overly climactic.
Right.
We'll have to see.
Well, on that note, if anyone would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decadentvegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on The Prisoner 2009, and Lex, of course, for next season. You can find us on YouTube at Decadent Vegetable. You can find us on any podcast platform at Inevitable, classic sci-fi podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you liked the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. Next time we're going to be wrapping up The Prisoner with Checkmate, but until then, the end.